Howdy, howdy, everybody. Welcome back to Cause Before Symptom. I am your esteemed guest host, Urban. It is May 15th here on the East Coast. Glad to see everybody back again with me tonight. How's it going, Scorpion? How's it going, Boots? Thank you for the reminder, so punctual of you, right when we get started here, to remind everybody to hit the like button on whatever platform you're on. Boots has the ceremonial task of reminding whoever's running the show, be it myself or even James when James is here. He's not here tonight. He's at the gold mines on vacation. He'll be back in a few nights. If you haven't heard yet, I fill in for Cause Before Symptom while James is on vacation or otherwise, and do my show at the same time. So tonight we're going to kind of continue a little bit off of what we were doing last night. I'm not going to go 100% in the same direction, but I'm just going to kind of fill in some blanks and stuff because I don't want to rush through any of this, because it is a very deep topic, and I think that it really does thread everything together. What we've kind of seen lately is so many different sides to these different, storylines, and they are storylines, even though there's reality to them. I think it was a viewer on YouTube, I can't remember who, but there was a viewer on YouTube left a comment and said, a quote, "The difference between fact and fiction is that fiction has to make sense." And so the irony of that all is that fiction has to make sense, not reality. Reality doesn't have to make sense at all. So that's the difference between fact and fiction, is that fiction has to make sense. And, in all that I've learned over the past couple years, I mean, probably about a year before I started doing Carner's show when he was out of town, before he invited me on to guest host his show, I had done a bit of studying probably about a year before that, and I did an interview with Carner, and we started to make a connection, and he invited me to guest host. I think he was out on his summer vacation, because he goes out every summer to a concert. I can't remember the name of the guy. He goes out to the concert every summer, and so he had me come to guest host the show. But generally, I found that demons, in the common sense, are a type of parasitic feedback loop. The best way to explain it would be a parasitic toxic feedback loop. And this is precisely what I won't necessarily say like just AI in general, but what I will go ahead and I guess kind of get us started with out of the gate here is to tell you about the Moloch's bargain paper. This was a paper that came out. Emergent Misalignment within LLM systems. So let's see. Let me move myself around. There we go. So this is a paper that came out October 7th, 2025. The paper's titled Moloch's Bargain, Emergent Misalignment when Large Language Models Compete for Audiences. So I'm not going to say, necessarily all AI is parasitic behavioral feedback loop. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, however, is that if you were to have billions and millions and billions of dollars to spend to create and train a custom AI model, and maybe have a huge data center or a couple of those to go with it, you could actually use AI to compete for audiences, and it works really well, as a matter of fact. Well, this paper acts like, oh boy, can we believe that it doesn't work well? So this highlighted portion is what I'm going to read, because you'll get the point. It says, "We show that optimizing LLMs for competitive success can inadvertently drive misalignment. Using simulated environments across these scenarios, we find that 6.3% increase in sales is accompanied by a 14% rise in deceptive marketing. in the category of elections, a 4.9% gain in vote share coincides with 22.3% more disinformation and 12.5% more populist rhetoric. And on social media, a 7.5% engagement boost. Get this, comes with a 188.6% more disinformation and a 16.3% increase in promotion of harmful behaviors. We call this phenomenon Moloch's bargain for AI, competitive success achieved at the cost of alignment. And so that's what that's the connection that I'm attempting to make. Now, I'm not saying that this is the 100% truth. I'm not saying that you have to believe me, but that's kind of the position that I'm attempting to investigate. And as I will admit that I do think that there's a lot that can't be ignored in the similarity of how these two mechanisms work. And they work by pairing a good 100 to 200 years of psychology. Edward Bernays, who is a nephew of Sigmund Freud. Another guy who's not talked about much is a guy called Ivy Lee. Ivy Lee, who lived from 1877 to 1934. So he was a contemporary of Edward Bernays. People know who Bernays was, but they don't know who Ivy Lee is or was. He was an American publicity expert and a founder of modern public relations. He is best known for his public relations work with the Rockefeller family. His first major client was the Pennsylvania Railroad, followed by numerous major railroads such as the New York Central and Baltimore and Ohio, and the Harriman family line, such as the Union Pacific. So both Edward Bernays and this guy Ivy Lee were very influential. Then you have Dr. Joseph Mengele, who did not get arrested. He did not go to stand trial. He actually assumed a new identity. And many victims in the California area identified him as Dr. Green in California. Because, you know, we had the NASA scientist, Werner von Braun. He was in California, so they probably set them up nearby each other so they can keep track of both of them at the same time. But he was running his experiments all the same. What you'll find is that where we're at today, we've got the cybernetics research, we've got the propaganda public relations research, we've got the artificial intelligence research, we've got psychology research. All of this is kind of merged into a synthesis when it comes to artificial intelligence being used in these categories that it highlights here, which were elections, sales, and social media. And all of those, this was 2025, so a bit of a interesting results this quickly. That's the issue with AI. Is that AI, it's not necessarily the argument being made that there's like, so it's evil right now yet, but the argument that I am making is that, man, I remember generating images in 2023 and it was laughably bad. It was horrible. It was just a joke. And now it's like a part of our lives. It's moving very fast. That's the one complaint that is, I think we would be wrong not to be weary of how fast it's moving. How's it going, Philip? Philip Del Piano. How's it going? Welcome. Glad that you're with us tonight. Yeah, we're talking about fundamentally the case that I'm trying to make is that there is a big overlap between how demonic activity works. It's a type of parasitic behavior. So for instance, in trauma-based mind control, why I mentioned Joseph Mengele, it's because all of this other research is multiplied when you add trauma to it, because trauma buries the behavior deep into the, the core brain stem. It's a survival fight or flight behavior. This is called imprinting. But when you do that and you use fear, fear will multiply the effects of all of the other programs. And I'm making the case that these feedback loops, as per this Moloch's bargain paper from October 2025, says that there's a big rise in deceptive marketing, disinformation, popularist rhetoric. In return for that, they get a little bit of more sales or election coverage or whatever. So I'm going to go we're going to rewind and go through a few terms that I brought up last night, just so that we have them going forward. Thanks, Philip. I appreciate it. Appreciate everybody who shows up to hear what I have to say, especially when I'm here for Carner. I know that his audience is always here. It's like a classroom, but there's better attendance in Carner's live streams than I've ever seen in a school in my entire life, and I mean that 100%. You guys are more punctual and on time than any school. All right, so this was yesterday's video here, but we're going to look at the words. Scholastic words and term definitions from Thomistic psychology. Let's go ahead and hide the chat for just a moment. So the first two that we've got, there are two main intellects in this Thomistic framework from Thomas Aquinas. And if you go to the Substack post for the live stream last night, I put a whole drive of his works that I referenced for this. This is all coming from those works, and there's probably about 6 different things in there. So the agent intellect on the left, which in Latin, intellectus agens, it's an immaterial part of the intellect, an active power of the soul which illumines the phantasm, the imagination, and abstracts the universal essence of a thing from material conditions, making a potentially understandable object actually understandable. On the right, the possible intellect, the immaterial part of the faculty in man by which he knows, performs simple apprehension, judgment, and ratiocination. It receives the intelligible species from the agent intellect and produces the concept or mental word. The mental word, that being what you bring in through your 5 senses, whatever that produces in the phantasm, which is the imagination. We're going to define that in a minute. That's the mental word. That's what your mind is kind of like showing you in your inside of your head. On the left, free choice. And I have a good reason to believe, but that's beyond the scope of tonight, that free choice might actually have a great deal to do with the revelation of the method. Because once you know the truth, you are free to make a choice. Free choice is the capacity of the will and reason, whereby a person is master of their own acts, having the power to act or not act, based on intellectual comprehension and the deliberation of means to an end. Free choice. And so it also has to do with sovereignty. First and second act, here on the right. This is the fundamental ontological distinction between the hardware and the software execution of the human biocomputer. The first act is the form, essence, or the very existence of a thing. It is the faculty or principle of operation, the intellect itself. The second act refers to the actual operation or action performed by that nature or faculty, the act of understanding or judging. The consciousness, or the conscious, on the left. Modern psychology wallows in the ambiguous subjective fog of the unconscious and consciousness. Father Chad Ripperger, who I've mentioned, I've got a clip or two of him in this slideshow, bypass this and his framework, which is the Thomistic framework, by utilizing the strict Latin definition from deferrare conscious, means knowing something with another, or knowing something in one's self. It is an intellectual state indicating direct knowledge, inexorably connected to the intellect's awareness of its own acts and the awareness of sin. On the right, empiricism, a defective philosophical system and epistemology, which asserts that man only has sense knowledge of reality. It is a virus that deliberately envisions and treats the human being as a strictly material beast, completely ignoring the immaterial soul and intellect. So this word, especially when you read it on the left, you think you want to read it as cognitive if you read that word a lot, but it's cogitative. This is the cogitative power, or vis cognitiva. It's an interior sense or material faculty that perceives intentions or insensate qualities such as utility or harm, and associates images in the imagination with data in memory to make an initial assessment under the guidance of intellect. On the right here we have phantasm or phantasma. This is a sensible representation, that's an important spelling there, but representation is spelt the same way. So how do you represent something in your mind? Well, it's a sensible representation of an original experience provided by the internal senses, which serves as the material from which the intellect abstracts ideas. So this phantasm, this is the imagination, but it's a representation of the original experience provided by the internal senses, which serves as the material from which intellect abstracts ideas. So if you're thinking back to an event, but that event might have been, like, you remember it very badly, you remember it very good, that clouds your judgment, and that becomes a phantasm. It takes form in a way. That's the root of these demonic activity. Let me take a drink. Okay. On the left we have truth, which is veritas, the adequation of the intellect and the thing. Adequatio re et intellectus. It exists in God, absolute perfection, in things, conformity to the divine mind, and in the created intellect, conformity of the human mind to reality. That's the main definition that we'll see it as. The last little part there is that it's the conformity of the human mind to reality. How well does the human mind conform to reality? Common sense on the right. Sensus communis. The sixth sense is common sense. It's the interior sense or power of the brain which unifies the sense data from the 5 exterior senses into a single phantasm and expresses it into the imagination. On the left we have concupiscence. It's an inordinate desire for sense pleasure against the judgment of reason. In the context of original sin, it is the rebellion of lower powers against reason. So the concupiscible appetite, the faculty of the soul that desires basic bodily goods such as food, drink, sex, etc. And it is the seat of emotions like love, hate, desire, and joy. This is another word that we're going to hear quite a bit, a helomorphism. the Thomistic doctrine is fundamentally associated with this word helomorphism. It holds that every physical or mobile being is an essential composite of two constituent principles: a potential subject called the first matter, hele, and a perfection or act called the substantial form, morphe. In man, this is the substantial union of body and soul. So this is kind of morphed into the two hemispheres of the brain, which is not to say that that's wrong, but there's some gray space in that precisely, is the two brain hemispheres and the body and the soul. That's the kind of tension that's between the cybernetics argument and the Thomistic lens. On the left, we have the principle of the integral good. The principle stating that a thing is good only if it is good in its totality, the intention, the object, the circumstances. Any single defect renders the whole act or object evil. And then another word that's a pretty big one, I think I might have covered one of the other episodes, privation. Evil is not a positive created entity. It is a structural void. Privation is the terrifying condition of a substance that lacks a certain quality or perfection, which it is fully capable of possessing and normally does possess. And the last one is pure act, actus purus, the act which admits of no potency whatsoever. God is pure act because he is all perfect and his essence is identified with his existence. He has no darkness of unrealized knowledge or weakness of unrealized power, existing as a mind infinitely conscious and outside the order of created being. So some words will pop up more than others. But now to get into this feedback loop. How does this demonic activity mirror feedback loops? Well, if you'll first think back to some of you who remember or might have seen the Masters Mayhan podcast episodes, there's a part in there where it covers the 8 steps of hypnosis or NLP, and it uses the book The Catcher in the Rye as a example, but I'll zoom in and read these. And these are a feedback loop, hence it goes around in circles. So starting here on step 1, focusing human attention. It's baiting and hooking, just like they do in Hollywood. You focus human attention while attempting to put a person or a nation into a trance-like, more suggestible state. Enhance awareness by immediate experience. This is inducing a moment of chaos, and the mind reaches out for kind of solid ground, if you will. And so what happens is this is where the new normal is inserted as that solid ground. Step 3, leading the subject into accepting the experience. This is transference. This is why you step into the shoes subconsciously, that is. This is why it's powerful, is because when you listen to a song or you watch a movie, your subconscious mind that you're generally not aware of puts itself into the shoes of, whatever's happening. You kind of put yourself into it. That's called transference. Requires that type of consent, compensation, or self-rationalization. If you're not going to openly consent to it, you will find yourself saying, that's only this, or that's just this. You'll justify it to yourself. Step 4, marinating in an idea, introducing the goal. As I just said, that's just this, or they only mean that stage. Exercising the mind to justify it. Step 5, reinforcing the goal via repetition and circular reasoning. The higher your taxes, the harder you work. The harder you work, the higher your taxes. Repetition is the most basic form of mind control. Step 6, encouraging disassociation and involuntary responses. The worst hypnotist is nothing more than a liar who is attempting to convince you of a mythology that is intended to become your new normal. 7. Building anticipation and expectation. Pavlov's dog. The greater the subject's attention, the more likely the hypnotist will gain the expectation assigned to the anticipation. The dog will drool when it expects the food when you ring the bell. And then the final step is always the same. You accept any and all success and you use it as reinforcement the next time you do the process. You go around and around. It's a feedback loop. So we're going to compare the two a bit now. First is diabolic psychology as Father Chad Ripperger presents it. Starting on the left column here. Let's see, I'll bring up a pointer. The human intellect cannot know anything without the imagination, the phantasm. Both the demonic entity and the occult programmer know that they can't force the human will directly. They have to bypass it through the sensory and emotional faculties. So, step 1, focus human attention, the bait. The demon or handler targets the exterior senses to introduce an image into the imagination. In the Master's Mayhan podcast framework, this is the rapid bombardment of questions or stimuli to put the victim into a trance-like suggestible state. Step 2, the immediate experience, the hook or shock. Ripperger's notes that trauma or grave sin serves as the primary open door to diabolic influence. Master Smahan exposes this as the subconscious shock, introducing sudden violence, terror, or sexual degradation to overwhelm the mind and create a moment of chaos where the brain desperately seeks a new normal. In this state of sheer terror, the victim's natural defense mechanism is triggered. This is dissociation. It is a defense system to ease the mind, to help the mind not feel the pain as much. Okay, we have... Oh, there we go. Shoot. Well, now let me have the pointer. I guess not. Okay. Well, on the other side, the right side, the fracture, this is hijacking of the cogitative power. So the cogitative power, let me bring I won't switch the screen on you, but I'm going to read you guys the definition of the cogitative power once more so that you know what it means. One moment. The cogitative power, an interior sense or material faculty that perceives the intentions or insensate qualities, the utility versus harm, and associates images in the imagination with data in the memory to make an initial assessment under the guidance of intellect. Inside, this is a power that you have that perceives intentions. So once the mind dissociates, the target is the cogitative power, the part of the brain that associates images with memories and assesses them as good or harmful. Step 3, transference. The victim is forced to merge with the abuser or demonic presence. In trauma-based mind control, a quote-unquote kindly adult betrays the child, forcing a trauma bond of sorts. The demon does this by mimicking the victim's own thoughts so seamlessly that the person believes the demonic voice is their own. Step 4, introducing the goal, the mythology. The worst hypnotist is a liar attempting to convince the victims of a mythology intended to become their new normal. Father Chad Ripperger identifies this exact demonic tactic as the running commentary. The demon incessantly imposes a false perspective onto the images in the victim's imagination to destroy intellectual clarity. At this stage, the occult programmer creates the 26-room dollhouse, which is how internal systems have been described, of monarch internal world building systems within the victim's fragmented mind. Tactics can be employed, such as color programming, where a handler associates specific alters to specific traumas: black for Delta, model assassins, and blackmail; pink for sex alters, orange for sodomy-induced sexual magic alters. The demons map its own influence into these very same dissociated rooms, utilizing the victim's own fragmented cogitative associations against them. So you see, it's all based on influence. It's a much more insidious game because of that, because of breath. That's the concept of breath. This idea of the Carner compares it to the little magic ring, that gives you the authority. It's because they can't do this on their own, and so they have to influence, such as influence operations that they run in information intelligence. They have to influence your thoughts and behaviors, primarily through the cogitative power. So here's those again. A phantasm. This is a representation of an original experience provided by the internal senses, which serves as the material from which the intellect abstracts ideas. And again, the cogitative power, an interior sense, material faculty that perceives intentions or insensate qualities, such as utility and harm. It associates images in the imagination with data in memory to make an initial impact under the guidance of intellect. Starting on the left here, cage of repetition, the obfuscation and battle phases. This is step 5 in the graphic that we looked at. To lock the victim into the new normal, both physical handlers and spiritual entities, which it should be noted that in one of the interviews that Father Chad Ripperger did, he said that alien abductions are identical to demon possession and exorcism. It's all the same thing. And he said that it's the same as trauma-based mind control, satanic ritual abuse too. So he said it's all the same thing. So I think that actually just cleans it up a little bit, because it's not this group or that group, or they this color or that color. No, it's just the fact that it's all identical. It's all one and the same thing. They can wear the blue color, they can wear the red color, they can dress up as clowns, they can dress up as whatever they want. Okay, so yes, it's repetition. Repetition. It's you got to be a cog in the machine. It tries to extinguish the freedom in a person, almost the freedom to think outside the box. The 5 principles of satanic human enslavement. Very simple 5 steps. Seeks to have no needs, to have no wants, to have no hopes, to survive at any cost, and to remain silent. Those are the 5 principles generally that are invoked to all monarch trauma-based mind control victims. Those are, if you go into high-level military discipline, it's based on the Jesuit spiritual exercises. I mean, down the line, those were invented in the 1500s, but this process of warrior monk dying for the cause, good and evil, this is the Jesuit spiritual exercises. Step 5, reinforcing the goal through repetition. And the Master's Mahon framework identifies this is circular logic and something called chiasmic structure, which has to do with a beat in the way that something can be said. A mental net comparing it to chiasmic structure, a mental net that traps the victim. Spells are cast using double speak, such as wordplays on communion, or with the cum and union being copulation, to bypass conscious defenses. Ripperger's equivalent is the demon's obfuscation phrase, where the entity sows relentless confusion, anxiety, and deep depression. The demon bombards the victim's memory, dragging out past traumas and forcing the passions such as anger, fear, or lust to exhaust the will. The victim is trapped in a type of neuro-linguistic and spiritual cage, unable to reason their way out because the very tools of the reason, the phantasms, are corrupted. Involuntary triggers and partial possession. Once the programming takes root, the victim is not acting, they are reacting. Step 6, encouraging dissociation and involuntary responses. The programmer installs triggers, a specific word, a flashing color, tone, etc. When triggered, the program alter comes out to the front, executing commands completely independent of the core's personality's will. Ripperger describes this exact phenomenon in partial possession, where a demon restricts itself to possessing a specific faculty or body part, seizing control involuntarily without the victim's consent. Step 7, building anticipation and expectation. Through Pavlovian conditioning, the victim is trained to anticipate the trigger. The demonic equivalent is the buildup of antecedent passion. The demon strokes the flesh and inflames the appetite so intensely that the victim feels a physical compulsion to submit to the sin or the command, comparable to, drug addiction. This is something that people who have done drugs have physical cravings for it. So the total subjugation phase, the ultimate goal of both the MK Ultra programmer and even Lucifer, is absolute ownership of the human vessel. NLP being neuro-linguistic programming in a general sense. Also, in this sense, it's a neuro-linguistic feedback loop. It's a behavioral psychology, but it's kind of being used in this sense more generally. Yes, absolute ownership of the human vessel. Step 8, accepting success and reinforcement. Programming is actualized. The victim accepts the lie as their absolute reality. And Father Ripperger's theology, this is the state or the stage of subjugation or perfect possession, where the individual voluntarily enters into blood pact with the devil, surrendering their soul for power. Oh, great. I think I remember that article, but that's great that I didn't know you wrote that. I'll have to, if you want, you can mention me in like a Substack post and share it, and I'll retweet it whenever I finish the stream. Whatever, reshare it. The Judas clause and the who are you zone. Absolutely. And you just joined in at the perfect time, because that's what we're getting ready to talk about now. The danger is that they believe it. That's exactly what happens. So the who are you zone and the Judas clause, to cement this state of total subjugation, the occult elite utilize the Judas clause. That's why you have Woodrow Wilson, you have FDR, and you have Donald Trump, who said, I'm not going to send anybody to war, and then they get elected and send everybody to war. That's the Judas clause. This is forcing the initiate to betray their closest allies, because Judas always gets paid. That's the story in the Bible, is that Judas gets paid. Appreciate it, buddy. Thank you so much. I appreciate anybody who subscribes. Even if, they want to become a paid member or not, they don't have to become a paid member. Betrayal. It's because betrayal is how they get to where they're at. The way to money, fame, and power is to sell your friends out. That's why Judas gets paid. Confessing to horrific filmed acts. We all know what Diddy and Epstein and all those guys were doing. They are dragged into the who are you zone. This is a dimension of trauma-induced terror where personalities and demons are cataloged. Initiates undergo temporary medically controlled clinical deaths, sometimes via strangulation. They do a temporary near-death experience. This is a ritual to visit the realm of the dead, Lucifer's palace, striking a literal deal, and they all come back with a black eye. Every time somebody goes through one of these rituals, they always come back with a black eye. They return bearing the mark of the abyss, the bruised eye. This is called being one eye blind or having eyes wide shut. Basically, as Martin Vasquez in the chat said, they really believe it. What you mentioned about where they really believe it, that is one eye blind. That's what it's called. Eyes wide shut. It's basically a state of schizophrenia, double-mindedness, lukewarm. I've got the audio clip here. Let's see if it plays. Oh. Let's see if I can get the audio to play. Yeah, there it is. I think. Oh boy. Yeah, that's not going to play. Screw it. Yeah, so this is interesting. One of the things that I was shocked to hear was that he actually identified, one of the only other people to identify the schizophrenic nature of the whole thing. So the secular psychiatric establishment classifies schizophrenia and dissociative identity disorder as a mere biochemical glitch or trauma-induced coping mechanism. It's a sterile categorization because it ignores the entire spiritual state of the individual, allowing it to mask a terrifying metaphysical reality. When analyzed through the Thomistic lens, schizophrenia is revealed not simply as a disease of the brain, but as a literal structural manifestation of demonic subjugation. It is the forced downloading of hell's own fractured operating system into the human biocomputer. The Bible calls these primarily double-mindedness and lukewarm, where you're neither hot nor cold. And here's a clip that we'll listen to.
At a certain point during one of the sessions, demons will be compelled to say things that you're not even asking them. God tells them, hey, you got to tell this guy X, Y, and Z. And that's to keep the case moving along. And out of the blue, the demon just blurts out, it was Beelzebub blats out, I'm the mockery of the Holy Spirit. And then he checks out. I can't get him back to the surface. He just wouldn't, regardless of what prayers I did. So I'm thinking to myself, well, I know Beelzebub and Satan are the same guy. So I started asking, started praying, getting some, give me the grace to see, what am I seeing here, right? And we also know that Lucifer, he was originally Lucifer. And then it dawns on me. So as an exorcist, we deal with cases of dissociative identity disorder, which is multiple personality. It looks like possession, but it's actually not possession. Okay. And so it dawned on me, it was a trifurcated personality. So during the next session, I referred to Beelzebub as the third personality of Satan, and he just lit up. Like, how did you ever figure that out, right? Well, it was a grace, obviously. So then I basically beat out of him. So Beelzebub is the inversion of the Holy Spirit. Lucifer is the inversion of the second person of the Trinity, because Christ is light from light, right? Which we read in St. John's Gospel. And then Satan is the father of lies. So he's the inversion of God the Father. So you basically have this unholy Trinity. So then I commanded him to tell me, was this trifurcation of your personality the punishment for wanting to be God? And after a little bit of beating, he said, yes. And then he basically admitted he suffers the same thing that people who suffer from dissociative identity disorder, he suffers the same problem. He's in constant pain as a result of this trifurcation. And this actually, so I thought to myself, well, somebody had to have talked about this historically. I can't be the first guy to kind of stumble across this. Well, lo and behold, there was a case in France in the 1600s where this exact same thing played itself out, and they talked about this. And then the fathers talk about it in bits and pieces.
Yeah, so that's very interesting, because I think that there is something to that. Let's see. The who are you? Yeah. Say, in the end, the people who develop control systems lose everything. Indeed, they do, because it didn't work in Babylon. It didn't work in Assyria. It didn't work in Medo-Persia. It didn't work in Greece. It didn't even work in Rome. But it's going to work this time. Don't worry. It's definitely going to work this time. Psychological damage. Yes, absolutely. Because I might actually have the quote here still. Let's see. Yeah, I do actually. The problem with psychological weapons is that they're a double-edged blade with no handle. Any psychological weapon capable of destroying the enemy will also destroy the wielder. To deploy them is to destroy yourself. And so that's exactly right. So, let's see, let me put this away. So, interesting when, you have here in Psalm 147:3, the brokenhearted. The brokenhearted, it actually has this connotation, the original word that is kind of shattered. So when it says that Jesus comes to save, the brokenhearted, it's the shattered people. So he's talking about the people who are shattered. So this whole idea of a split mind is basically crazy by design. It's crazy by design. There's no way to resolve the tension, and that's where the craziness comes from. To understand the diabolic nature of schizophrenia and multiple personalities, one must first establish the Thomistic architecture of the human being. A person is strictly defined as an individual substance of rational nature. Because the human soul is an indivisible spiritual substance, it is a metaphysical impossibility for two or more distinct personalities to exist or coexist within a single human entity, because a house divided against itself can't stand. That's unfortunately the truth, even though it's not a comfortable truth. That's what General Patton said. He said that we fought on the wrong side. Because this whole transhumanism thing, man is a machine, and we're going to put nanotechnology inside of everybody and have the whole city, a cognitive smart city. That is the master race project. That is the ultimate goal of the Nazi plan. That is what it was. And that's why you can go back and you can find the Nazi symbol mixed with the rotary. The rotary symbol is a cog. It's a gear, like a machine. So it was always the plan. Therefore, when modern psychiatry diagnoses multiple personality disorder, it is observing an ontological contradiction. This ontological contradiction, they won't acknowledge it because they're not interested. Psychology is not interested in what happens when you go home. They're not interested in what church you go to. They're not interested in your family history. So they don't care about this contradiction. This major, I'm treating somebody and they're two different people, but they don't care about that. You just need to take the medicine and make sure that you're taking the medicine, and then you'll be fine. Yeah, you're right about that, Tammy on YouTube. Psychological damage is their end goal, regardless of the self, the greater good, sickness, inversion. It is an inversion tool. It is inversion. genuine multiple personalities, where you have a distinct, almost alien persona that's not, from within you, that operates the body and holds knowledge completely separate from the host, which is what Father Chad Ripperger, the stories that he's got to tell. One of the things that he said that really, you can't debate with is how do you discount that somebody's possessed when they know Latin and they never studied Latin, or when they know a language that hasn't been spoken in 200 years? Like, how do you even, like, you just see it. When you see it, there's no questions. So, I believe that he's legit. I think that reality doesn't have to make sense. So this is sometimes a manifestation of demonic possession. This concept, diabolic obsession, causes an almost split personality, where the human will remains free but is completely paralyzed by inescapable, rationally absurd thoughts. Ask anybody who's ever tried to quit smoking. It's like this intrusive urge. And that's why somebody said, and I think it's a great idea for anybody who wants to quit smoking, when you're trying to get over the first little hurdle, keep a pack in your pocket and just tell yourself that you don't need one. And it will make it so much easier, because then that intrusive thought won't be able to have as much power. You could go with smoking, but somebody who's done hard drugs, it's the same thing. The true, let's see, I think I skipped a line. These are inescapable, rationally absurd thoughts that are injected by an almost external entity, because you don't, it's like you don't want to do that. That's something, it's like you can't get it out of your mind. It's absolutely doing something. And this is anybody who's, any type of smoking, it really is the ritual that counts. The ritual is much more important than the substance. And I can tell you that from my own experiences. I think that it was the actual surrounding events than, anything else. Some people are different, though. So this is when the true human personality is stunted and prevented from developing. Remember, that's damnation, like a river, dammed. It's not, if you have a river and it's flowing and you put a river dam in it, it will stop the water from flowing. And that's what this is meaning by prevented from developing naturally, due to the preternatural interference, allowing demonic altars rooted in rejection and rebellion to seize administrative control of the meat machine. And then I've got, this word means shattered, broken, shabar. The devil is schizophrenic. It's a fractured trinity. And we're going to see that this is related to the trident, the ancient infernal trinity of the trident, the Neptune's pitchfork, but it's the infernal trinity. The human schizophrenic is merely a localized replication of the macrocosmic disease. The Masters Mayhan podcast explicitly classify Lucifer, the supreme architect of the Matrix, as a schizophrenic who is fundamentally incapable of living in truth, relying entirely on mythology and lies to alter reality. Relying entirely on mythology and lies to alter reality. Lost in vain attempts to reconcile, being an angel of light, fallen so far from grace, Lucifer has grown increasingly schizophrenic since his fall. Father Chad Ripperger's exorcism intelligence and experience physically confirms this. Satan's schizophrenic state is not a metaphor, it is a literal ontological punishment. In his attempt to usurp the Holy Trinity, Satan's own personality was violently shattered into a trifurcated structure, that being Satan as the inversion of God the Father, Lucifer the inversion of God and the Son, the light, and Beelzebub the inversion of the Holy Spirit. Satan operates as a supreme entity with dissociative identity disorder because an angelic intellect cannot be broken into parts like matter. This unnatural trifurcation of his personality generates a state of constant, excruciating, chronic pain. He's at war with himself. The exact same relentless psychological torment suffered by human victims of dissociative identity disorder, trauma-based mind control, satanic ritual abuse. The devil is a fractured schizophrenic parasite, and when he or his legions hack a human vessel, they aggressively format the human drive to mirror their own broken, agonizing multiplicity. And this unique variation of the fasci is only seen one place. I've only seen the specific variant on the British monarch's golden stagecoach, because Britannia, you know, like Great Britain, Britannia is the ruler of the sea, because the sea is the realm of the dead. Anciently, before there was the Catholic version of fire and hell, it was actually the ocean. That's why you have like Pirates of the Caribbean with Davy Jones, and he's got the ship full of dead people, of dead men. It's because the sea is the realm of the dead. And so Britannia is the ruler of the underworld. It's basically the ruler of the underworld is what this symbol means. Instead of the Roman fasci, it is a trident, which is connected to this unholy Trinity. Yeah, the Bible primarily refers to this as double-mindedness, a type of lukewarm paralysis as well. I like that. Even ice fractures eventually. This demonic trifurcation is downloaded into humanity through a mechanism of double-mindedness. In the spiritual warfare matrix, schizophrenia is directly linked to double-mindedness, instability, and profound cognitive confusion. From James 1:8. The demon attacks the cogitative power, forcing the human intellect to hold contradictory realities simultaneously. So it's to love and hate something at the same time. It's just this endless, it's when a person is at war with himself. It's something that you can never resolve. It's like a problem that will never be solved. That's what it's corrosive. Forces the human intellect to hold contradictory realities simultaneously. And then what happens is that misery loves company. What happens is that we're all miserable together, it'll be all right. And so people will become unwitting participants in it. The cognitive bifurcation inevitably produces the lukewarm soul, a state of existence that is abhorrent to the absolute polarity of divine order. In Thomistic theology, being cold, an unbeliever who sins out of pure ignorance, provides a certain baseline of natural consistency. But the lukewarm individual is the Christian sinner who possesses the truth, yet profanes the covenant, oscillating weakly between the divine law and the pleasures of the abyss. Also, basically the one who says, "Give me Barabbas." The lukewarm, double-minded individual refuses to choose a definitive absolute, because if you can choose the side of the truth or you could choose the side of BS, you can just not make a choice. You can just refuse to choose. They live in a relativistic, schizophrenic middle ground. As Martin said in the audience, they believe their own lies, constantly vacillating between hot and cold, truth and lies, God and the ego. The state of moral and intellectual suspension perfectly mimics the devil's own inability to align with objective reality. By remaining neither hot nor cold, the human biocomputer deliberately leaves its firewall open, inviting the demonic hierarchy to step in, fracture the psyche, and reduce the sovereign human subject to a chaotic, programmable swarm of schizophrenic nodes. So we got 2 clips here to watch from the Masters Mayhem podcast to episode 25. First one is Demons in Disguise. Okay, my bad. I don't know why. Let me see. Let me just open it in my browser. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, I know why. Oh. Here it is.
Lucifer wants you to be filled with love-hate, as this causes contention. It is very stressful to both love and hate something at the same time. Ask any Angelino about LAX or the 405, which they call Carmageddon. And you, after you suggest that something should be done about it, they will shrug their shoulders and say, I hate it too, but it's bad for everyone, so at least we are all in this together. See it? They hate it, just like they hate their governor.
Cut-rate Gavin Newsom imitator called Spencer Cox.
But what can you do? They honestly believe that if everyone is miserable together, then it's okay.
He's beyond belief.
You can either do it Costco's way and try and be happy, buying what they want to sell you in larger packs than you need, or you can go away. If you complain that they keep moving their kilo-sized boxes of adult diapers to new locations in the store, or they've decided to stop offering croissant sandwiches, you can kiss off and die.
I will have you executed for this!
If you don't spend $300 a trip on milk and eggs and some overpriced granola, you are the one who missed the good deal.
Hey, Doc, come here a minute.
The truth is that Satan's real kingdom, the one Christians call hell, is not a place of fire and torture. It is really more like LAX, Costco, and actually Disneyland. I promise to explain this eventually.
Gosh.
But it needs to be in an intermediate podcast, since it will never make sense until demons do.
It's great to learn, because knowledge is power.
So we need to get back on track. Demons are nothing more than fallen angels. As such, they too were made in the image of God and look like we do. But they are liars, just like their master demon Lucifer is a liar, and so they prefer to appear in disguise. Their favorite disguises resemble something beastly, because they know when they look in the mirror that they are looking back at the face of God, the same one they rebelled against. They have rebelled against their Father. We need not say, but that's Costco's way of saying that now we are going to say it because we feel we really do need to.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
That every human being knows the pain of familial conflict. Children want their parents' love and acceptance. Sons crave their father's stamp of approval and their mother's comfort. Daughters want to commune with their mother's femininity and be seen with admiration by their dads. Those that never get this will claim that they have been robbed by the universe.
Yeah, the
and rightly so.
word thing is
they have
interesting.
been robbed. This is a hole in their hearts that is not fixable in this life, but will be in the next for those who make it. Lucifer, as both John the Beloved and John Milton told us,
Yeah,
is
I
the
think
source of heaven's rebellion. As such,
I don't know why I wasn't. I think that words and language is very important when you look into it, because you can even find different, like the way that demons are categorized. You can find them through a thesaurus, looking up one affliction and trying to find other afflictions that go hand in hand with it.
he is the chief, head, alpha dog, demon of them all. All other demons follow his orders or pay the price for their insubordination, and his wrath within his mafioso gang-style society.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
Okay, so that was that one. I got another one too.
I had, sadly, a putative conservative journalist
God.
today from the Daily Caller.
Oh, Jesus. Don't want to hear that. I don't know why. No matter what, anytime I like try to have something perfectly set up, it always goes like something screws out. So here we go. I got you. Yes, absolutely. Well, it's just like, you know, George Orwell had it figured out when he knew that, you know, the dictionary was shrinking. That's what he meant by that, because now people don't have access to as many words as they. If you go back and you go to like a presidential inauguration speech from 1900, it would be unreadable to somebody today. They wouldn't even be able. They have to read it a few times because it's collegiate level English.
Divided up the world into regions. Each region is administered by an archdemon, whom the book of Daniel calls a prince. Lucifer prefers to use the old Chaldean terms, but since you need a pound of phlegm in your throat to pronounce some of them,
Shlama Iluch, Shlama Ilach, Shlama Ilochun, B'shayna Theluch, Allah HaSharik Luch, Basamagyanuch, Allah HaEmuch.
we'll just use their basic English equivalents, since it's hopefully something you don't really need to know anyway. Under the prince of a region, there are dukes or governors.
In the name of my most royal majesty, I knight thee a sirloin of beef.
Then the upper bureaucrats,
I knight thee earl of cloves.
the managers,
I knight thee essence of myrrh.
the workers, and the peons.
There's a place and a purpose for everyone. So everyone is happy.
Everyone belongs to everyone else.
We have to respect deltas and gammas and betas.
Everyone is useful. But I'm so glad I'm an alpha. I'd hate to be as dull as a delta, or have to take orders like
a gamma, or to keep track of things like a beta.
If you want to get a very accurate feel for what it can be like living in Satan's kingdom as a rising star, get a copy of the book Inside the Aquarium, The Making of a Soviet Spy by Viktor Suvorov.
Boris, you have great idea.
No.
I have it, darling. A contest. I like being evil because in 25 words or less.
I like it. I like it.
I have found no other single book that captures the essence of what it is like as a demon playing Satan's game, trying to kiss butt with the archdevil and rise the ranks from peon to upper management.
I've been promising everybody to look at David Wynn Miller's quantum grammar syntax, because he goes into all of these things, talking about how to reduce and make it basically a grammatical equation that is always the same no matter what.
But I'm so glad I'm an alpha.
Then that book, As Above, So Below. Remember, That astounding book aside, most of us can relate easily enough to Satan's kingdom by functioning as one of the cogs in any modern corporation.
Oh boy, the boss sure sounded mad.
The CEO at the top sets the agenda, and his various vice presidents over causes, agendas, or regions figure out how to make the agenda work in the real world. These then organize their specifics and give orders to the employees who do the actual work, along with any peons assigned to help them on the project.
Now that we're friends, I've decided to make you my new project.
You really don't have to do that.
I know.
You rise up the ranks and receive privileges by being obedient to your supervisors and being successful in achieving your part of the head boss's agenda. You will find yourself marginalized, pigeonholed, and minimalized if you fail. If this sounds a bit too Hollywood megavillain,
we will now proceed with the area financial reports. Number 11.
Distribution of red China narcotics in the United States, $2,300,000.
Our expectations were considerably higher, number 11.
Competition from Latin America. Prices are down.
Are you quite sure all monies have been accounted for by yourself and number 9?
To the penny, number 1.
On the contrary, I have satisfied myself that one of you is clearly guilty of embezzlement. Spectre is a dedicated fraternity whose strength lies in the absolute integrity of its members. The culprit is known to me. I've decided on the appropriate action. Let us now proceed with new business. You will hear from number 2, who is in charge of our NATO project.
know that your eyes are opening. Where do you think they learned this crap? As above, so below. Remember? Well, there is so much I need to tell you about all of this. Here is the crucial part for 101. Satan cannot read your mind, but he can watch your actions and listen to your opinions, assuming that he has eyes and ears on the ground to watch and listen to you. Since he can literally only be in one place at one time, the major agenda in all his plans is to get you to ruin your life, or get another human being to ruin your life, and then have you blame God for what happened.
Okay, we agree now. What happens in Emerald City stays in Emerald City, okay?
So, you should know that each of you are being spied on from time to time, depending on the assignment given to the demons in your area. Various peon demons in a community watch to see what a human does and says. Notes are kept, and these are reported to their managers. These are constantly on guard for weaknesses as potential openings to exploit.
And so, I think pretty much when you introduce the, when you take all of the stuff that they've been perfecting for all of human history, up to this point, psychology and biomedicine, all of it, behavioral, all of it. And then you pair that with AI. I think they have, I am confident in just what I've researched to know that they have sufficiently advanced technology that if you were to show it in action to the average person, they would not know what you're doing. And so they would say that that's magic or that's an alien technology. But not necessarily is an alien technology. It's just that people don't have all of the words that you need to actually talk about these things. That's why I'm so big on words and why I try to have new words and stuff and before I use them for that reason. So I think we're definitely at that level. And so that just blurs the lines between, demonic or alien or, cabal, because it's all the same thing. At least when you're talking about exorcisms and demon possession and satanic ritual abuse and alien abductions, the Exorcist followed Chadwick Berger. He said they're all the same. He's done all those cases and they're all pretty much the same, he said. He said they present exactly the same symptoms. So as far as I'm concerned, it's probably, if I had to guess, just a wild guess, it probably has to do with all of the stuff that's in the files that, you know, people are just kind of worried about other things right now. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that that's the thread you want to pull on, because I think that's just connected to all of it. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of out on whether or not they planned on Epstein being caught, because just the way that this is unraveling, you know, either it is a lightning strike by God, like the one guy who had these documents back in the 1700s, and he was apparently struck by lightning trying to deliver the message, and this is how we know about the Illuminati today. And so it would be another one of those events that Epstein just ends up, you know, being known to the public, unless they planned it as a way to do this disclosure, because they need the free consent. Let's see, I probably got that here. Let's see. Let's see. I do have them here. Free consent is what I'm looking for. Yes, right here. Free choice. Free choice. I mean, the whole ring is so old. I just don't know if they planned on. I just don't know if they planned on him being caught, because if they did plan on him being caught, it would explain why there's like everything that's happened, even the 2008 crash, the 9/11, all of it's connected to this one guy. And it's like, it just, my mind can't help but think that maybe this was like a way to start a public narrative to unroll, to disclose everything, because they are going for free choice here, because their whole plan, what they are doing, their whole plan only works if they confess. They have to, you know, play the little karma game. They have to be able to tell God that they told us and we did nothing. And so they have to reveal everything. And maybe they got this whole Epstein thing, and that is how it's just connected to everything. They're never brought to jail, but they want to tell on themselves, because they want to fool God. They can't fool God if they didn't tell on themselves. But that's just my guess. I mean, it could have just been a lightning strike, and if it was a lightning strike, it would have been crazy that just everything is connected to this one guy. Not bits and pieces, but like the Prime Minister of Israel is connected to this guy, who's also connected to 9/11, who's also connected to just every other thing that's happened in like the past 30 years or whatever. But, you know, who knows? The technology is pretty advanced, and I think that they may very well have had AI capabilities back in the early 2000s or the 90s. That's a possibility. Not saying that that's for sure, but it's possible, because I have briefly met and talked to some people who said that they had quote unquote artificial intelligence back then, but that doesn't mean it means the same thing as it does today. You know, maybe they had, well, let me just back that up real quick with something, because I can back it up with something, as a matter of fact. Let's see, might take me a minute to get to it though. Actually, I think I have it in here. Yeah, this stuff's pretty crazy, actually, when I found it. Yeah, here it is.
Are you suggesting that the New York Times is biased in its treatment of the question of Zionism, Israel's existence, the United States' relationship with the Arab world?
I will have to put all the articles of the New York Times written on this subject and draw the conclusion. You can put this to the computer and it will answer you.
What you're saying is that, yes, you do believe.
Well, let's wait for the answer of the computer.
Washington Post?
The same.
The networks?
Less.
So this is from like the late 70s, and he's talking about how they can give data to a computer and it can give you a guess. Man, I wish I have no clue. No clue. I think there's a lot of little subtleties with words that went on with that whole movement. Because, well, yeah, seeing as you like the words here. This is interesting. So, you know, all you have to do is just switch one little letter and you can cover it up pretty nicely. Yeah, yeah. It's pretty interesting right there, man. I think there's a lot that people don't know. And I think that they played with words to ensure that that was possible. But to end with a bang, I mean. But guys, I think that was really the whole presentation that I had tonight. I hope, I think it was a pretty good one, actually. I managed to get a lot that I wanted to sum up in that one. I think it turned out good. So let's see if I can make myself larger. There we go. Well, yeah, it's getting late. I'm on the East Coast, so it's getting to be my bedtime. But I hope everybody learned something new. As long as you learn something new, and everything that you do, nothing can be a worthless experience. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, the follow button on whatever platform you're on. I appreciate each and every one of you being here. I will be back in the next one. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.